Hello, and welcome back to Insight Avenue. If something in your life feels smaller than it should, stay with me. What you're about to hear is designed to open your thinking and your future. This is not a video you play while doing something else. It's not here to entertain you, motivate you for 5 minutes, and disappear. What you're about to hear is meant to challenge the way you see yourself and the size of the life you believe is possible. Many people feel stuck, not because they lack ability, education, or opportunity, but because their thinking has quietly learned to stay small. They speak carefully. They dream cautiously. They lower their expectations without even noticing. And over time, life begins to feel narrow, repetitive, and heavy. If you've ever felt like you're capable of more, yet something invisible keeps holding you back, this series is for you. Here, we don't chase comfort. We build clarity. We don't shrink to fit the world. We expand to meet it. And if you're learning English, this is also a place to train your voice, to speak with confidence, presence, and global energy. Stay with me. This is not motivation. This is a shift. Most people believe their limits come from the outside, from money they don't have, from English they don't speak well enough, from opportunities that never arrived. But the real prison is quieter than that. It lives inside the mind. Small thinking does not announce itself loudly. It doesn't say, "I will ruin your life." Instead, it whispers reasonable sentences. Be realistic. Don't aim too high. People like us don't do things like that. And because those thoughts sound practical, they go unchallenged. This is how people end up living inside a small mental room for years, sometimes for life. The door is open. The world outside is visible. But they never walk out because they've trained themselves to believe the space they occupy is all they deserve. Here is the truth most people never hear clearly. Your life does not shrink because reality is cruel. It shrinks because your thinking quietly agreed to stay small. Before skills matter, before strategies work, before English fluency makes a difference, something else must happen first. Your mind must accept expansion as possible. Belief is not a soft concept. It is a biological trigger. When belief is present, the brain searches, it adapts, it endures discomfort. When belief is absent, the brain conserves energy and shuts down effort early. That is why two people can stand in the same situation and move in opposite directions. One sees limits and stops. The other sees possibility and begins. The difference is not intelligence. It is permission, internal permission to grow. Many people wait for confidence before they act. But confidence is not the cause. It is the result. Action builds confidence only when belief opens the door first. Without belief, action feels pointless. With belief, even small steps feel meaningful. Think about how often people say, "I'll start when I'm ready." What they really mean is, "I'll start when I feel safe." But safety has never created growth. Expansion always begins in uncertainty. The mind must stretch before life can. This is especially true for language learners. When someone believes their English is not good enough, they don't just speak less. They think smaller. They avoid rooms, conversations, and opportunities where growth happens. Their world quietly contracts. But when someone believes their voice deserves space, even while imperfect, their world begins to widen. Small thinking protects comfort. Big thinking creates movement. And movement is the first sign of a life-changing direction. You do not need proof that expansion is guaranteed. You only need to stop assuming limitation is permanent. The moment you allow the idea, "Maybe I can do more than this," to exist, something shifts. The walls don't disappear instantly, but they stop feeling solid. This is where everything begins. Not next year. Not when conditions improve. Not when you feel confident. It begins the moment you refuse to think smaller than your potential. And once that refusal is made, your life will start responding. Because a mind that no longer accepts small thinking cannot stay in a small world for long. Many people say they want success, but what they really want is certainty. They want guarantees before effort. They want confidence before action. They want proof before belief. But life does not work in that order. Belief is not the reward at the end of the journey. Belief is the engine that starts it. Most people think success begins with skill, better English, better tools, better education, better connections. Those things matter, but they come later. Long before skill shows up, belief decides whether you even try. Belief tells your brain, this is worth energy. Without it, the mind shuts down early to protect you from disappointment. This is why doubt is so dangerous. Doubt does not scream. It quietly drains effort. When you doubt yourself, your brain does not look for solutions. It looks for exits. It finds reasons to delay. It lowers your intensity. It convinces you that waiting is smart and risk is foolish. And slowly, action disappears. Not because you are incapable, but because belief never turned the engine on. Look around the world, and you will see a strange truth. People with less preparation often move further than people with more advantages, not because they are lucky, not because they are special, but because they believe movement is possible. There are people with strong accents who speak on global stages, people with no perfect plan who build powerful businesses, people with limited resources who create influence. What they share is not perfection. It is belief strong enough to survive discomfort. Belief does something critical inside the brain. It changes how failure is interpreted. Without belief, failure feels like a verdict. This proves I'm not capable. With belief, failure feels like information. This shows me what to adjust. The same event, different meaning, different outcome. Most people quit, not because the path is impossible, but because they never believed long enough to let progress compound. Belief also changes how you speak. When belief is weak, language becomes soft. Sentences shrink. Apologies appear before ideas. When belief is present, even imperfect language carries weight. People listen not because the words are flawless, but because the energy behind them is clear. This is especially important if you are learning English. You do not need perfect grammar to sound confident. You need belief that your voice belongs in the conversation. Once that belief exists, fluency grows faster, because fear no longer controls your timing. Belief does not mean pretending everything will work. It means deciding not to quit before the result arrives. It means saying, I don't see the whole path, but I will take the next step. That decision alone changes how the brain operates. It starts scanning for options instead of obstacles. It shifts from defense to creation. It moves from waiting to building. Belief is not magic, it is momentum. And once momentum begins, the person you are today no longer has the power to limit the person you are becoming. This is why belief must come first. Without it, nothing moves. With it, everything begins. Many people believe they are tired because life is hard, but that is not the real reason. They are tired because they are aiming too low. Survival mode drains the soul. It consumes energy without creating meaning. When your only goal is to get through the week, pay the bills, or avoid mistakes, your days begin to feel heavy, even if nothing is technically wrong. You wake up, move through routines, and repeat the cycle. Not because you chose it, but because no larger vision is pulling you forward. Survival thinking is short-term by nature. It asks, how do I make it through today? Building thinking asks, what am I creating over the next few years? That single difference changes everything. Small goals feel safe, but they quietly suffocate ambition. They don't challenge identity. They don't demand growth. They only maintain the current version of you. Big goals, on the other hand, are uncomfortable. They stretch time, energy, and imagination, but they also give direction. They create a reason to wake up early, to learn after work, to say no to distractions that don't serve the future. This is why people with big goals often look more alive, even when they are working harder. Their effort has meaning. Their struggle has direction. Survival goals sound reasonable. I just want stability. I just want enough. I'll think bigger later, but later rarely comes. Survival has a way of expanding until it becomes a lifestyle, and once it becomes familiar, it starts to feel normal, even when it feels empty. Building goals feel different. They are not about ego or comparison. They are about ownership. Ownership of time. Ownership of growth. Ownership of direction. A building mindset does not ask permission from circumstances. It asks responsibility from the self. This shift is especially important for people learning new skills or a new language. When the goal is small, I hope I improve a little. Progress is slow and fragile. But when the goal is large, I'm becoming someone who operates globally, the effort changes. Practice becomes non-negotiable. Mistakes become part of construction, not proof of weakness. Big goals do not make life easier. They make life clearer. Clarity removes hesitation. It reduces mental noise. It aligns daily actions with long-term purpose. You no longer ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" You ask, "Does this serve what I'm building?" That question alone filters decisions with precision. Many people fear big goals because they're afraid of failure. But small goals carry a different risk. The risk of waking up years later realizing nothing meaningful was ever built. That realization is far heavier than effort. You don't need a perfect plan to start building. You need a direction that demands growth. The details adjust along the way. Identity follows action. Survival keeps you busy. Building makes you powerful. So ask yourself honestly, are you designing a future or just managing the present? Because the moment you stop aiming merely to survive, something shifts inside you. Energy returns, discipline sharpens, and life stops feeling like something happening to you and starts becoming something you are actively creating. That is when growth becomes inevitable. Your life is not random, it is reflective. What you experience on the outside is often a mirror of what you repeat on the inside. Not once, not occasionally, but daily, sometimes silently, sometimes without awareness. Thoughts are not harmless background noise. They are instructions your brain follows without argument. The mind does not question whether a thought is true or useful. It only asks one thing: how often is this repeated? And whatever you repeat becomes familiar. Whatever becomes familiar becomes normal. Whatever feels normal becomes your identity. This is how people slowly become smaller without noticing. When someone constantly thinks, "I'm not confident," the brain begins to filter the world through that lens. It avoids opportunities. It hesitates before speaking. It delays action. Not because the person is incapable, but because the mind is simply following orders. But the same system works in the opposite direction. When someone repeatedly thinks, "I'm learning, I'm improving, I don't need to be perfect to move forward," the brain adjusts its behavior. It stays engaged longer. It recovers faster from mistakes. It treats discomfort as temporary instead of dangerous. The difference is not personality. It is mental programming. Two people can start in the same place. Same background, same resources, same challenges. One feeds their mind with limitation. The other feeds their mind with growth. Over time, their lives move in completely different directions. Not because of luck, but because thought patterns shape behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. This is especially visible when learning something difficult, like a language. One person tells themselves, "I'm bad at speaking. I always mess up." Their brain associates speaking with threat. Anxiety rises, memory drops, progress slows. Another person says, "I'm not fluent yet, but I'm improving every week." Their brain stays open. Mistakes become data, not danger. Progress accelerates. The brain listens carefully to how you describe yourself. If you speak to yourself like someone who is weak, Your nervous system responds with caution and retreat. If you speak to yourself like someone in training, your system responds with focus and resilience. This is why thought control is not about positivity. It is about precision. You don't need to lie to yourself. You need to speak accurately and constructively. Saying, "I'm unstoppable," means nothing if you don't believe it. Saying, "I'm getting stronger through practice," gives the brain something it can act on. Every sentence you repeat internally is shaping the person you are becoming. Over time, those sentences turn into habits. Habits turn into identity. Identity turns into destiny. This process is always running, whether you guide it or not. So the real question is not whether your thoughts matter. They already do. The question is whether you are choosing them intentionally or letting old patterns choose for you. The moment you begin to guard your inner dialogue, something shifts. You stop feeding the version of yourself that stays small. You begin training the version of yourself that can grow. And once that training begins, your future stops being accidental. Most people believe leadership is something you earn later, after the title, after the recognition, after someone gives permission. But leadership does not begin with position. It begins with identity. The world does not suddenly treat you like a leader the moment your circumstances change. It responds to the standards you carry long before anyone is watching. Leadership is practiced in silence, when no one is applauding, correcting, or validating you. A follower mindset waits. A leader mindset decides. Waiting feels responsible, but it often hides fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being wrong. Fear of moving before certainty arrives. Leaders understand something different. Certainty is built through action, not before it. This is why people who think like leaders move differently. They do not ask for constant approval. They do not pause every step to see who is watching. They focus on direction, not reaction. Mission, not mood. Leadership thinking changes how you respond to resistance. When things don't go smoothly, followers ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Leaders ask, "What is required now?" That shift removes emotion from decision-making and replaces it with responsibility. Thinking like a leader also changes how you speak. Leaders don't over-explain. They don't shrink their language to avoid discomfort. They choose clarity over comfort. Even when their voice is calm, their direction is firm. This matters deeply for anyone learning English or stepping into new environments. Leadership does not require perfect language. It requires presence. When you believe you have the right to be in the room, others respond differently, even if your grammar isn't flawless. Authority comes from intention, not perfection. Leadership thinking also demands self-governance. Leaders manage their time, their focus, and their energy deliberately. They don't let emotions run the schedule. They don't allow distractions to decide their priorities. This discipline is not harsh, it is protective. It protects the future from being consumed by noise. Many people wait to feel ready before they lead, but readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision to act with responsibility despite uncertainty. Leadership does not mean controlling others. It means controlling yourself, your standards, your reactions, your direction. Once you adopt this mindset, life begins to respond. People trust you more. Opportunities expand, not because you demanded them, but because you became someone capable of handling them. You do not become a leader when the world crowns you. You become one when you stop waiting for the crown. And the moment you begin thinking like a leader, your life starts reorganizing itself around that decision. Because the mind that leads itself cannot remain stuck for long. Most people think words are just sounds, tools for conversation, simple ways to exchange information. But words do far more than that. They shape direction. Every sentence you speak, out loud or silently, gives instructions to your brain. The mind does not separate language from reality. It uses language to interpret what is possible, what is dangerous, and what deserves effort. This is why vocabulary is not only about communication, it is about control. Weak language creates weak movement. When someone constantly says, "I'll try," "I'm not sure," "maybe later," their brain hears uncertainty as a command. Action slows, confidence leaks, momentum disappears. Life begins to feel heavy, not because the situation is impossible, but because the language guiding it is unclear. Strong language works differently. It does not guarantee success, but it creates direction. Words like "I will," "I'm committed," "I'll figure it out" signal readiness. The brain responds by searching for solutions instead of exits. Energy aligns with purpose. This difference is subtle but powerful. Most people don't realize how often they speak against themselves. They narrate their life with limitation. "I'm tired. I'm bad at this. That's not for people like me." Over time, these sentences become internal laws. The brain enforces them faithfully. But language can be upgraded. This does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing words that move you forward instead of holding you back. Replacing "I can't" with "I'm learning" changes the nervous system's response. One creates shutdown, the other creates engagement. For people learning English, this principle is even more important. Many learners shrink their voice because they're afraid of mistakes. They speak softly. They apologize before speaking. They avoid conversation entirely. But communication is not about flawless grammar. It is about clarity and intent. When you speak with belief, even imperfect English carries weight. People listen because your message has direction. Confidence is not hidden inside pronunciation. It lives inside intention. Language also shapes identity. The way you describe yourself determines how you behave. Saying, "I'm the kind of person who finishes what I start," reinforces discipline. Saying, "I always quit," trains surrender. The brain obeys whichever story you repeat most often. This is why changing language is one of the fastest ways to change momentum. You don't need a new plan. You need a new internal script. From this point forward, listen to how you speak. Notice the softness. Notice the hesitation. Notice the self-reduction hidden inside casual phrases. Those words are not harmless. Upgrade them. Speak with clarity. Speak with intention. Speak like someone moving towards something larger. Because when your language expands, your thinking expands. When your thinking expands, your actions follow. And when your actions change, your future has no choice but to respond. Words are not decoration. They are direction. Choose them accordingly. Most people think excuses are harmless. Small sentences that protect comfort. Quiet explanations that reduce pressure. But excuses are not protection. They are a system. An excuse is not just a reason. It is a command your brain obeys. Each time you say, "It's not the right time," "I'm not ready," "Others are better than me," your mind receives a clear instruction. Stop movement. Over time, those instructions stack. Momentum slows. Confidence fades. And eventually, action disappears entirely. This is why excuses are dangerous. They don't fail loudly. They succeed silently. Think of the mind like a high-performance machine. It is capable of speed, focus, creativity, and endurance. But one line of faulty internal code, "Wait, it's risky," can shut the whole system down. Not because the machine is weak, but because it was programmed to hesitate. Excuses are that faulty code. They feel reasonable. They sound intelligent. They even feel responsible. But their real function is delay. And delay is the most efficient way to kill growth without facing fear directly. Here is something most people miss. Excuses do not remove pain. They postpone it. You avoid discomfort today, but you carry regret tomorrow. You skip effort now, but you inherit limitation later. The cost is simply deferred and multiplied. A man once sat in his car every morning before work. He held the door handle and waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He told himself he was tired. One day he didn't wait. He stepped out. Nothing dramatic happened, and yet something changed. That moment stayed with him. Excuses grow stronger the more you negotiate with them. If your brain is trained to explain why something won't work, it will never be trained to make it work. This is why progress does not come from arguing with excuses. It comes from deleting the entire system. Execution is the replacement. Nature understands this well. A plant does not pause because conditions are imperfect. It does not explain why growth is difficult. It simply grows, upward, consistently, with whatever resources are available. That is not optimism. That is design. Your mind must be trained the same way. When an excuse appears, do not analyze it. Do not debate it. Do not improve it. Act anyway. Action breaks the pattern. Movement rewrites the code. Even small action reactivates momentum. Most people wait for motivation before acting, but motivation follows action, not the other way around. The first step is often uncomfortable, quiet, and unrewarded. That does not mean it is wrong. It means it is working. Excuses create a comfortable cage. Action breaks it. The goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to move despite it. Once excuses lose authority, something powerful happens. You stop explaining yourself. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop negotiating with hesitation. Life begins to move again, not because circumstances improved, but because execution returned. Delete the excuse system. Replace it with action, and you will discover that the person you thought you were, limited, tired, unready, was never the truth. It was just a story that no longer runs the system. Big thinking without action is imagination. Big thinking with action becomes power. Many people live with strong ideas but empty calendars. They talk about vision, potential, and dreams, yet nothing moves. Not because they lack intelligence, but because action never closes the circuit. Thought alone does not change reality. Motion does. Action is what turns intention into impact. Look at how energy works in the real world. A system can be perfectly designed, but without flow, it produces nothing. Electricity needs a closed circuit. Engines need ignition. Rockets need thrust, powerful enough to break gravity. The same principle governs your life. Ideas are useless until pressure and movement activate them. This is where many people stop. They think. They plan. They wait. They wait for confidence. They wait for clarity. They wait for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment never arrives, because clarity is created by movement, not before it. Action also introduces pressure, and pressure makes people uncomfortable. This is why it is avoided. But pressure is not punishment. It is preparation. Every powerful structure in the universe is shaped under force. Carbon becomes a diamond only after enduring extreme heat and compression. Steel gains strength through fire and resistance. Even continents are formed by tectonic pressure pushing against itself for millions of years. Creation does not happen in stillness. Human growth follows the same rule. When pressure enters your life, responsibility, discomfort, uncertainty, it is not there to destroy you. It is there to shape you. The problem is not pressure itself. The problem is resisting it. Resistance turns pressure into pain. Acceptance turns pressure into performance. This is why people who avoid pressure stay fragile. Their systems never adapt. Their thinking remains shallow. Their tolerance for difficulty stays low. But people who lean into pressure build capacity. They become sharper, calmer, and more resilient over time. Failure is part of this process. Failure is not a stop sign. It is a signal. In engineering, systems are pushed until they break, not to shame the design, but to discover its limits. Failure provides data. It reveals what must be reinforced, adjusted, or rebuilt. Without failure, strength remains theoretical. But small thinking treats failure as identity. Big thinking treats failure as information. Once you understand this, fear loses control. Action becomes easier, not because success is guaranteed, but because failure is no longer fatal. It becomes feedback. Pressure plus action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence compounds into identity, and identity determines future behavior. This is how futures are built, not through motivation, but through architecture. Thought creates the blueprint. Action lays the foundation. Pressure tests the structure. Failure strengthens it. If you avoid action, pressure turns inward and becomes anxiety. If you move, pressure turns outward and becomes power. Your future is not waiting for permission. It is responding to movement. So do not wait to feel ready. Move while uncertain. Act while imperfect. Build while learning. Because the world has no defense against a person who thinks clearly, acts decisively, and uses pressure as fuel instead of fear. That is how thinking becomes destiny. Take a moment before you leave, not to feel motivated, but to feel clear. Everything you've heard comes down to one truth. Your life does not expand by accident. It expands when your thinking does. Small thinking keeps you comfortable, but contained. Big thinking demands more, but it gives more back. It changes how you speak, how you act, how you respond to pressure, and how you see yourself when no one else is watching. You don't need permission to think bigger. You don't need perfect conditions, perfect English, or a perfect plan. You need a decision to stop shrinking your future to match your fear. What you think today becomes what you practice tomorrow. What you practice becomes who you are. So choose your thoughts carefully. Choose your words deliberately. Choose action, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because the moment you stop thinking small, your life begins to reorganize around that choice. Stay present, stay disciplined, and never forget, the size of your future will always follow the size of your thinking.